Lou, can you try and give us a quick summation of what the Social Enterprise World Forum was?
For me, it was about an opportunity at a time and a place to come together.
You can tell who the accountant is in the group, can't you? What's took price before I make my decision on what took beer's like?
Let's do a shorry. Twice, 2 weeks in creative endeavour shares the stories and journeys to now of people making a positive dent on society. I'm your co-host, David Benstead. We're really grateful for episode support from Biz Dojo, Collider Wellington and craft beer support from Garage Project. I'm really pleased to welcome back New Zealand's food organiser, Rebecca Stewart. How are you doing?
Kia ora, I'm doing well, thank you. Sun's shining outside. We're inside the cave, in the pod cave.
Totally. And fully recovered from the Social Enterprise World Forum last month?
Yeah, look, it was such an incredible kind of group of people, and I felt really kind of fatigued in the best way afterwards. Yeah, lots of people time, lots of new ideas. After I came back, I went with my friend out to the south coast and just like looked at the sea for a while and had some fish and chips because I just had 3 days of just looking at human faces. But and it's been nice to have a couple of weeks to process all of the things and follow up on some contacts and just back into the grind now.
Hey, social enterprises could very possibly eat the existing business world with social impact at their core. Ākina Foundation are themselves a social enterprise dedicated to developing the sector and movement here in New Zealand. Off the back of a wildly successful, I believe I can fairly say that, 10th Social Enterprise World Forum held for the first time in New Zealand, we're pleased to again welcome 2 members of the Ākina team to chat and to taste and rate craft beer. Our first guest studied geography and qualified as a chartered accountant. He's flown with the RAF, taught sailing and confidently states Christmas tree harvesting as a favourite job. Time consulting and financial services for EY Group may or may not have aided his beer mat flipping prowess. His current role is as International Director for Ākina Foundation and he's just back from a work trip to the Solomon Islands. Really pleased to welcome self-described reflective optimist and actual trumpet-playing blues brother, who is Chris Blues.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. It's lovely to be here.
No, great to have you along.
Our second guest started off in criminology, but now this eternal optimist prefers to work solving the case of how to best use business to do good. She uses her love of people and opportunities to build strong relationships as General Manager and COO of the Ākina Foundation. Today, we'll find out if she is the good or evil twin in her family. 2 weeks in creative endeavour, pleased to welcome Louise Aitken of the Ākina Foundation.
Kia ora, thanks so much for having me.
I sincerely hope you've had a few days off between the World Forum and now.
Not quite yet.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think the opportunities that are available to us now mean that we just have to keep on running, which is really exciting. And it's been quite the journey. And now we're focused on what comes next, which is really great after 2 years of planning.
And for you, Chris, obviously you wanted to get out of the country as fast as possible. Anything you want to tell us about the World Forum that meant you wanted to leave that quickly? Or,
the people,
the final night.
The actual worst.
Yeah. It's just, you meet so many people, it's quite overwhelming. Ultimate respect to people who have to do the 8 a.m. until 12 p.m, but unless you are an extrovert, it's, I don't know, maybe you, Rebecca, gets to 9 o'clock, I just want to go to bed. And I had to catch a flight on the Monday to Solomon Islands. And it was an incredible event and very lucky. I suppose if it was just the Social Enterprise World Forum on its own, I think it would have been nice to have some time to reflect as well. Maybe we should do some forced reflection. Is that possible? Is that a juxtaposition?
Yeah, is that like organised fun?
Reflect, goodness, reflect.
Quick. Well, yeah, we've kind of tried to find a moment, I think, for every individual and then as the Ākina team to kind of what are our reflections on it, what are the insights that we got. But there was just so much and there was so many opportunities and so many chances to understand what's going on in New Zealand and overseas that it's probably going to take us a good 6 months to really, get to that next stage, because constantly you're remembering a conversation or an insight that someone shared with you or an information that someone passed to you that doesn't really make sense until well after it. And I think we have to accept that that's going to be the process, rather than here's the end of it and this is an Excel spreadsheet of all the opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's the sign of an amazing event, I think.
And the sign of a very effective colleague who, obviously with an accounting background, puts all his learns into a spreadsheet and puts it in front of your face.
I've never done that,
No.
unfortunately. I think it it takes a bit of self-discipline to kind of just let it go out of your control and just let things settle where they settle. With individuals who know, we've been very lucky at Ākina, is that the fact we're free to follow what interests us. So, and I think it's one of the difficulties of doing what you love is that, you're often up at 11:30 at night reading reports from the Asia Development Bank. You think, goodness me, this is very sad. But yeah, I think we've just got to let things settle and see what happens after that.
Yeah, I think for us, we, as an organisation, we always knew that this was the moment. This was a big lever for New Zealand, for social enterprise. And what that has meant will still unfold. So we can't step forward and think, okay, now we've got, a set, number of things to do or opportunities ahead of us. We are in a new world, and that's really exciting. And we always knew that would be what the Social Enterprise World Forum would bring to social enterprise as a sector in New Zealand. And I think it overwhelmed us on how accurate we were on that, because I don't think any of us expected it to have been as successful as it was. The relationships that we now have, the opportunities that we have not only to learn but also to teach. And I think as a country, that's really, we come in a really strong place. And I think for a lot of people, that was a really big outcome of the World Forum, is that we have confidence in who we are, and we know that people want to learn from us and want to share and develop things with us. That probably 6 months beforehand, we would have thought, well, we're going to learn everything. But actually, a lot of people came to New Zealand because of the hope that they would learn the magic that we have here. And that was really powerful.
I think in addition to that is the importance of an honesty of knowing that we actually don't know everything, believe it or not.
Wow.
But the role of facilitators, just to listen, actively listen, and to connect people, at least that's a learning from me, is that's a really valuable next step, for us as individuals. To let go of that control and just facilitate other people to have really great conversations. And if they're having trouble, provide some guidance.
We had a policy day on the Tuesday, which was at the extraordinary new Kilmarnock base in Christchurch, and we had senior officials from New Zealand government. We had policy makers. We had intermediaries. We had about 70 people, New Zealanders and their equivalents from all of the big countries, the big social enterprise countries. And I think often it was thought in the lead up that, this is great because Canada's going to be there and Scotland and Italy, and they're all going to hand over everything because they've done it, and look at them with their great policies and strategies and everything. And the Victoria government is going to be there and they've done this amazing thing. Well, throughout the day, it really became obvious that we had a lot of international experts who were actually admitting that they don't know all the answers either, and that it's about just getting on and doing stuff. And you could get this sense of relief in the room that we don't, even from a policy standpoint, we don't have to have the world's best policy. We don't have to be best practice. We just have to get on and try stuff. And that for me was one of the biggest insights that I got. It was just this sense of, okay, let's just do it. Let's just figure out how we can develop the ecosystem, what role does government have in that, and we can all work together to learn from each other. And the international delegations were saying, wow, we can learn from New Zealand as well. And that was really exciting, because people have done it, they've made mistakes, they're quite open about sharing those mistakes. And so if we can do things better and faster and quicker, then fantastic for us. So it was a pretty cool thing to watch, actually.
And I really felt that from the forum, that there was a sense of vulnerability, of really, saying we don't know, let's build it together. And I guess that's the magical thing about being a baby sector, that now after the forum, there's that real feeling of a cohesive, a sector that we're all moving towards. But equally, just like having a startup, when something doesn't work, you can just stop doing it. We can just do something differently. And it's a special space to be in.
Lou, you've talked a little bit about one of the things that which was positively surprising for you. How about for you, Chris, in terms of your expectations before compared with now? What perhaps has surprised you?
I think it's quite unusual to have people coming together to share insights in such a way which is proactive but doesn't just become a talking shop. And I think I kind of summarise Lou's statement as, let's have a bias towards action here, guys and girls. And let's all accept that. Let's define what good looks like and let's work towards it. And really, let's not just have another talking shop where we've paid $2,000 for this boardroom or this space. We've actually got a responsibility to move this forward faster. I think it's clear that current social and economic systems are failing around us. Some are perfectly functional, but we can't afford to wait. And that sense of urgency, I think, is really important to create that bias towards action. We kind of talk a bit about the burning bridge, whether it's real, whether it's manufactured, whatever we can do to move people forward in a direction they feel comfortable with. So I think that was a real positive for me. And where people feel empowered to do it without our help as well. And us as an organisation are happy for that to happen. Not that we have any right to be happy or unhappy. And it's acceptance that actually this is an organisation that we're kind of facilitators in the future marketplace. One of the negatives, and I think it's around when you're trying to innovate in the system, whenever you're trying to transition from one system to another, is you do push against incumbent players in that system. And I think there is a sense of people trying to own ideas. The fact that we have Whāreaki, the fact that most of our IP is free to share.
Sorry, what's Whāreaki?
It's the online platform which has all our resources on it.
Right, yeah.
All open source. And that's where innovation happens, but that's a kind of a cultural shift. So I think it's to fight our human instinct, or some people's instincts, to try and protect what they've got and try and push past that. And I think that's a legacy of philanthropy and charity in general, where we are competing over a scarce resource, like one pot of gold or money from the government or a foundation. And this idea of how do we incentivize collaboration? And that's something I'm really fascinated by how we can do moving forward, is what key levers can we play, what key levers can we pull to incentivize people to work together in a proactive way. And I think some of the negative I saw was some conversations were players thinking, okay, how do I protect what I've got here? What does this mean for me? And that's a natural question. And how do we not just push them aside and say, look, this is a new frontier, this is a new world, how can we actually include them in the conversation? But in a way that we have a bias towards action.
I think it's time for our first brew. You up for this? First brew?
Sure. Yum.
Super happy to have two more brews from our friends at Garage Project. The first of which is
Garage Project Pig Squeal. Ooh. Pig Squeal in England's deep south. It's slang for a sour or tannic cider. The Pig Squeal in this bottle is a unique blend of beer and apple juice, cooked up in collaboration with the wonderful folk at Peckham Cider. 1/3 freshly pressed cider apple juice, 2/3 soured wort, which I'm guessing is a beer.
I'd hope so.
Co-fermented and then lightly dry hopped.
I like this. Did you get this one knowing that there's two Brits currently drinking it, to make us feel nostalgic?
No, not at all. Not
and
at all.
that I don't like beer, so I really like the sound of that. So, yay!
Fantastic. Pleased that your hustling went well, though.
Yeah. I'm pleased with how it unfolded. It's only taken 2 years. Well, cheers.
Not anywhere near 1,000-day anniversary, then. Go right.
Smells like cider.
Yeah, like a hoppy cider.
Flavour, it's not so sweet as a normal cider.
It reminds me of just a good scrumpy.
Not so beery, like a beer.
Scrumpy.
A delicious, high-class scrumpy.
Yes.
by the Boyd
It's
Garage
kind of like you
Project.
got a rye neck
The dream.
and added a scrumpy.
Yeah.
Scrumpy means the same thing, right?
And who hasn't done
Rough
that?
as, basically, yeah.
Yeah. It's delicious.
What was that called that they banned in New Zealand?
Was that passion pop?
Oh, the snake bite or whatever.
Snake bites. That was
Yeah.
cider and beer, wasn't it?
And Ribena. It's a
Wow.
blackcurrant.
Ah.
But it doesn't
This is not
taste like that, Garage
Yeah.
Project. It's much better than a snake bite.
Just see them storming off. Yeah.
But that is a beer I will drink again. And
Oh,
I
so-
don't drink beer.
So you don't usually drink beer?
No.
So when everyone goes to the pub, do you have like a glass of wine or something?
A glass of wine or on a hot day of cider.
So, Chris, having led with "It's like scrumpy," which I'm crying about into my glass, any further comments that help redeem yourself?
Maybe I've just got low standards because that's the top end of my drinking spectrum.
That was a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. It made me feel nostalgic. I did live in the West Country for a few years, so I think it's a bit of a session as well. I think I could get through a fair few of those on a nice sunny afternoon. Served ice cold, good friends. They've done a good job.
Would you have a view about how strong you think it is?
Oh, I was going to actually ask how strong it is.
We'll get the guesses first, then we'll give you the answers.
What's a normal beer? 4 point something? A wine's 11? I would say 6.6.
Oh. And Chris?
I think it's quite high.
6.6.
6.9.
Ooh.
Is 6%.
Ooh, well
Bo was
done.
closer.
It's no scrumpy. That would be pushing the 12% mark.
No elephant beer.
Garage Project, you've got something to aspire to. Up the percentage. And
No,
you've got to
but that's
mark
good
it right
though,
here.
because that's like 2 of those, and you're still rocking. You're still okay.
Or 2 of the scrumpies and you're rolling down the street.
You're dancing on the table.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Rebecca, you just led in with that you really quite liked the initial taste. Any further thoughts?
I agree. It seems sessionable. It is kind of confusing to me, but not in a bad way. I don't think it's particularly complex. It really does just kind of taste like cider and beer mixed together. But in saying that, I would have it, as you say, in the sun with some friends around.
It's very quaffable.
How about scullable? David, your thoughts?
Oh, I really quite like it. I really quite like its relative uncomplexity. The sense that you're not having to... Craft beer can be a little bit up itself sometimes. I have to get that on mic from Lou, actually. That was some great...
Really? Let's be clear.
Let's be honest now. Come on. Yeah.
There has not been a label of Garage Project that I haven't liked, and I do buy beer because I don't like the beer. If I'm buying somebody beer, I'll buy it solely based on the label.
Okay, that's a good way to do it.
And I don't even look what type of beer it is because it could be anything. It could be a stout. It could be. It's like I don't
It's
care.
like me buying wine.
It's pretty much. Me, like, I do the same. More price driven, but anyway. But yeah, I mean, I like it.
Can you describe it for us?
It's got a kind of heavenly looking pig who's eating apples, which is probably quite good.
Huge.
With a lovely ribbon around its body, which is interesting. It looks a happy pig.
Makes me think of
Which
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, it does.
Doesn't make you think of bacon at all, right?
No, it makes me think that the pig is happy to be eating the apples and being joyful in life, which is what probably a pig squeal is all about.
That's beautiful. Is that on the back of the label?
Maybe.
It should be.
Chris, any final thoughts on the label? Maybe we could move you towards deigning a score out of whatever gradation you care.
I don't know. This is kind of, as you were saying, it's kind of a complicated beer. It's kind of like, I think as human beings, we like to categorise things and then get confused. Is a pumpkin a fruit or a vegetable? Nobody knows. This beer is a bit like that. Like,
Never thought of that question. Oh,
goodness. This is what I do at Ākina. It's all these complex reframing
The big
questions.
questions, yeah. The big stuff.
I'll give it on a sunny afternoon in Wellington, Oriental Parade. I'll give it a 4.5.
Ooh.
As long as it's cold.
And Lou, final comment and a thought?
Well, given the fact that I don't drink beer and that I will now go and buy Pig Squeal from Garage Project, kind of have to rate a 5 out of 5.
All
I love these
right.
two optimists over here.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. You don't give them any room to improve, do you? You're just like, yes, great, you.
They've won my business.
Yeah.
They've done what they intended to do.
For me, because of the confusing aspect and because if I have a cider, I really want it to be a pure kind of really dry cider. I think I'm going to go a 3.5. It's quaffable, but it's not outstanding to me.
I'm going to go 3.8. It's nice, but it's the Garage Project produced so many amazing beers, most of which we've tasted on the show, that it's not perhaps distinctive enough, but I don't think that's its intention.
The one consideration is, what's the price?
I have no idea.
Brie.
Donated.
You can tell who the accountant is in the group, can't you? What's the price before I make my decision on what the beer's like?
If you think about social enterprises, this kind of marrying of the business and the charitable sector, and sometimes, you can take one great thing from one or one great thing from another, but in fact, in both sectors, there's, this incredible bias against collaboration. I mean, coming from the not-for-profit sector, even though you'd think that would be the one where we're all holding hands because we're all working towards a common goal, it's the same. The pot of money's there. There's no one's got any time. So there's no incentive to work together, even if that would be effective, because at the beginning it's slower, and you might be missing out on something. So it really is, as you say, a new world that's, I guess, greater than the sum of the parts of the business and charitable sector.
Yeah, it's funny because, being the eternal optimist, I think the one thing that I got out of it, and a number of people have said this to me post-forum, is with all of that and all those challenges, the best thing that we saw was a real value alignment, is that, at the highest level, people were there to talk about a more inclusive, prosperous society that enables community growth, that enables people to succeed. And how do you keep hold of that? And in those challenging conversations around the pot of money or the time where you're crossing in another organisation or you're not properly aligned, how do you keep on reminding yourselves that you're all actually there for the impact, you're all there for the ultimate goal? And sometimes we're not very good as organisations of articulating that. And it was this real sense that I got at the World Forum is that the values were so clear that people were actually there because of that. And that was lovely. It was lovely to see and see in lots of different ways. But we have to remind ourselves in those difficult kind of conversations about funding and about opportunities and purpose, actually what are we actually trying to do? And I kind of constantly have to remind myself that too.
And I think it reminds me of, I'm not sure if you've read Elon Musk's autobiography, because, Ākina is a bit like Tesla, clearly.
Not really.
What? Right,
Why stop at moonshots, eh? Yeah.
I'm comparing Scrumpy to Pig Squeal and Teslas to Ākina. But the reason why I say that is there was one thing that really stood out to me in his autobiography was, how do you articulate that vision? And if you walk into SpaceX's foyer, they've got a 3-story poster in there, one of which is Mars uncolonized and one of which is Mars colonized. Everyone aligns to that kind of vision. And I think we have to accept that some people respond to concepts really well. Some people respond to storytelling. Some people respond to images. And that, having worked in the Pacific, storytelling, visual images are a really great way to share ideas. And I think it's our responsibility and the sector's responsibility to kind of articulate it in a way which is accessible and simple, and maybe an image is the right way. I'm not sure how we can an image, but I think that's really important.
I am so going to be very aware next time I'm walking into Ākina's offices, seeing what's on the wall, seeing what the pictures say.
We're in a shared space, so not much wall action going on.
Lou, can you try and give us a quick summation of what the Social Enterprise World Forum was?
For me, it was about an opportunity at a time and a place to come together with lots of different views, lots of different experiences, and really challenge ourselves as a collective group as to what is our tomorrow, what is our opportunity to use traditional business to deliver impact, or to use traditional charity to deliver impact through enterprise. And I think it was really interesting that we got not only close to 400 social entrepreneurs in the spaces, but also representation of all of the other players in the ecosystem. So corporate were there, government was there, investors were there. This was the opportunity for the first time in New Zealand to enable a conversation that had never happened before. And I think that was the value of it, is that people with probably a lot of different understandings of what social enterprise even is got the chance to talk with each other and to think about what does this mean for us as a society here in New Zealand, but also our role in the international conversation. And that was really exciting for me, because I come from corporate world before I joined Ākina, and I have never been able to crack that. I've never been able to sit in an organisation and think, how can I have a conversation on impact and purpose? And we had 140 corporate leaders turn up to a day to have that conversation, which was extraordinary in itself. And in the investor space, we had, and Dave Allison said this really well, 4 years ago, if we asked a bunch of investors to come and talk about impact investing, we probably would have got 7 to turn up. We had 170 turn up. That is just the sign of the conversation is now ready to take place. And that was really empowering, I think, not just for Ākina and not just for, our friends in the intermediary space and those who enable it, but for social entrepreneurs and people sitting there doing the hard yards on their own and thinking, I'm in Kaitaia and I'm all alone in this. Now they've got a tribe. They've got people that are doing the same thing, whether they're in the South Island doing it or they're in Washington, D.C. This was enabling conversations which we have never had that chance before, and I don't think we might again. So what's our responsibility as a result to continue that conversation?
Is there like a side bet in the office about anytime Alex puts his hand up for something, somebody quickly runs over and tackles him and said, no, not for another 10 years?
We'll wait and see.
Yeah. I think the Social Enterprise World Forum is quite often I use timelines as well. And in the UK social enterprise, you talk about timeline, it starts with the co-ops in the 1800s. I think this will be one of the first notches on the timeline that people will talk about in 150 years' time when they talk about social enterprise sector. That will be it. It's the inflection point. Not to say it didn't exist beforehand, but I think it's where someone say, this is a thing, people are behind it, this is where it started. So I think that for an external person, that's really what they'll see from the World Forum. Also, I think, Louise was talking and I was like, what's different about the World Forum than any other conferences? And I've been to lots of conferences and lots of them become like echo chambers. So there's a lot of, on panels, there's lots of head nodding. Yes, I agree and, that's normally, oh yes, and I agree and. I think there was actually, I don't know if this is a proper word, but kind of proactive conflict on the panels in a good way. Constructive conflict, I suppose, it's a really good way, which was beautiful and it felt so refreshing. In addition to the energy of having lots of youngsters, lots of people on the ground doing the work, when someone started whooping right on the first day when Minister Naro was doing the opening speech, I was like, this is unusual. And it's infectious. Yeah. It really is infectious. And so suddenly people had the permission to whoop. I certainly did. So apologies for that. And I won't do it again now. But that's special.
Not too sure what you were whooping at, but anyway.
Just the general feel,
The vibe.
The vibe, man.
I just want a reassurance it's not a mating call.
I'm sure for some it was.
Hey, look, Boogie Wonderland's closed now. No longer will the mating call be heard. The Blues Brother mating call.
What was your favourite film? The Rock?
Yeah, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Just beats Armageddon, but Armageddon's a close second. But
yeah,
I think Nicolas Cage is probably the most incredible actor of all time.
Is Armageddon that one with Will Smith? No.
No. Please leave now.
There's kind of good cultural references from one side of the table and terrible ones from the other.
What's that one? Where there's the big... Oh, no, I'm thinking about Independence Day.
Oh, that's also very good.
Is The Rock the one about...
Alcatraz.
Alcatraz, yeah.
Yeah.
With Sean Connery in it.
Sean Connery.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, Moneypenny. That's a different film.
No, he's not in... But he's in The Rock.
Yeah, Nicolas
yeah,
Cage.
yeah.
It's pretty good.
Thoughts on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Love him.
Yeah. Isn't he darling? Those
Love
pictures
him.
where he's saving that little dog from the pool. He's like so big, but he's so tender. Anyway, that's what I think of when you say The Rock.
That's exactly when it said his favourite film. I was like, and he said The Rock. I was like, The Rock's in such great films.
Fast and the Furious 45.
Your point about the whooping, though, was like one of the key takeaways I had from being in and around the conference. And I felt like I was partly an attendee, but also partly had the privilege of basically bossing Anna Kea, who's the board chair of Ākina Foundation, to literally run from that day on the Tuesday to get back to do the pre-recording. Like, it was like an hour later or whatever. It was just kind of like, he felt terrible, I felt terrible, and all the rest of it. But the impression I overall came out with was of this relentless positivity. It was just palpable, this sense that this isn't just, like you say, talking. It is the possibility of doing, and quite soon. And like that directing in really good ways. I mean, you talk about facilitating, but it's also that sense is like, this thing is on people's radars as it's not impossible. It may be a challenge, but it is a doable thing for the future. And that just like came out of that. I'm like, I need to go and stare at the sea for a few days now, just like Beck. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what was also really good about it is that there isn't one type of social enterprise. There isn't one model that works. There isn't a download you can get that says how to do a social enterprise. A social enterprise can be community-led development. It can be a high-growth export opportunity for New Zealand. And we have to be really mindful of that and accepting of it and enabling of that, because what is really important from what I really observed at the World Forum is the impact is what drives the value that not only the entrepreneur feels in doing the business and running this extraordinary thing for them and their communities, but also it really adds the value. And so how can the model, whatever that looks like, be enabled by the rest of the ecosystem, whether it's capability, investment, policy, whatever it might be. And that was one thing I really took away from the World Forum is there's not just one type. There's lots of types, and they can all coexist and not have to challenge or compete with each other. And that was really great to see.
Something I noted afterwards was I could split individuals or organisations into two sorts. One of which was an organisation that used the existing resources to set the parameters of what's possible. They said, I've got $100,000, this is what I'm going to do. I think what we're trying to do through the forum is say, let's set the goal and let's align everyone to try and create the resources to make it happen. And I think that's a really empowering feeling, right? You're not suddenly restricted by, all right, I'm only limited by this sphere, the amount of people I've got, the money I've got. It's actually saying, let's buy into this concept and we really back ourselves to persuading people, investors, organisations to making it happen. And for me, I feel that's really empowering, and that's why I'd like to whoop, and I think seeing people transition from one to the other is even better, saying through storytelling, through actually look at Koto in Vietnam, look at proximity designs in Myanmar, heavily international, but let's share these stories so actually it's possible to go outside the resources you have. So I found that very good.
And not always necessarily having to open the cupboard and wheel out Chuck Norris every time.
Sadly not. Even though we like Chuck Norris.
Love Chuck Norris.
Or should I say New Zealand's social enterprise, Chuck Norris? Neither of you are going to say it, are you?
Nope.
I'm sensing there's a bit of a trap going on over the other side of the table.
No, not at all. But talking of which, I don't know if you'd care to try our second of the offerings of the afternoon.
Certainly.
Whoop. It's David here, just rounding out this first of 2 episodes, hearing from Ākina Foundation persons of interest, Louise and Chris. Since recording the show, Louise has been announced as the organisation's new chief executive, taking over the reins from Alex Hannant, who steps down at the end of the year after 6 productive years at the helm. Part 2 of this episode publishes in a week and delves deeper into the legacy and practical learns from the 10th Social Enterprise World Forum, alongside a second craft brew and my fearless regular co-host, Rebecca Stewart. Find links to them and others mentioned in the show notes in your podcast app of choice or via twicepodcast.com. I've 2 favours to ask, and they won't cost you a cent. Firstly, it's great to be supported by BizDojo and by the Collider Wellington programme. If you're in Wellington or in New Zealand, check out what they can do for you and for your business. BizDojo are creating and facilitating communities of talented, interesting and clever humans, pursuing their passions through a growing network of co-work venues across New Zealand. They've just taken the keys to a second Wellington community, which is opening soon. With flexible options for small and large teams and contract-free plans to suit any type of new or not new business, go develop your purpose over at bizdojo.com. Collider Wellington is a monthly programme of largely free events where you can seek out some of the smartest people on the planet, learn something new and access world-class intelligence. Their goal is to connect thought leaders, emerging entrepreneurs and inspirational experts to support the growth of the greatest little city on earth, Wellington, New Zealand. For all the details, go to colliderwellington.com. That's spelt Collider, WGTN.com. Our grateful thanks to BizDojo, Collider Wellington and Wellington City Council for their continuing support of this show. Secondly, if you're listening to the show on iPhone, open up the purple Apple Podcast app and rate us by selecting many gold stars. Your simple moment of action will help us spread the good word of people making positive dents on society. You can check out our back catalogue of more than 60 long-form social enterpriser-focused shows published over the last 2 years via reaching for your favourite podcast app of choice or via twicepodcast.com. Also, connect with the show on Twitter and Instagram at twicepodcast, and you can reach me on Twitter at David_Binstead, Binstead. Upcoming, for episode 63, we're chatting with Miriam and Marty from Montejo Earthcare, a Wellington-based sustainability development social enterprise dedicated to improving outcomes for local community and environment. That'll publish in 2 parts from about the 22nd of November. While it's coming up to summer holidays in New Zealand, we're already booking guests out to mid-February 2018. If there's a New Zealand social enterpriser you'd like to hear featured on a future show, drop us a line at twicepodcast@gmail.com. It's a privilege to capture and share stories of people making positive dents on society. And I'm grateful to you, our listeners, for tuning in, from wherever in the world that is. I hope the conversations, in some small way, offer inspiration for developing your own creative endeavours. Thank you for your support. It means a lot. Cheers.
There is a thing that's coming up in Christmas time called the...
That's awesome.
It's not the official Ākina Christmas event. Nearly as good as the final night of the Social Enterprise World Forum.
So I left Lou probably about 12:30, and then we had a flight at 11 o'clock the next morning, and
Good effort, girl.
There was 3 mums grilling a dad about things that he was saying, and we just were relentless.
Did you enjoy it though?
I feel like I did. Oh, it was awesome, and I feel like you guys had a lot more to kind of like let loose on than
yeah.
than
Well,
the
we
rest
were
of us.
so well controlled all the other
exactly.
nights because
Just so
minister
much riding on
dinners
it.
and
Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
I know. Well, yeah.
I bought some. What the shots I brought? Those pre-mixed shots with the foil on top
Oh,
on Wednesday night.
Oh, classy. I
Yeah.
always see those at the bottle shop. I'm like, who buys those? Chris does.
$2.50 well spent.
And that was
Ooh.
duty-free price as well, right?
The rum was good though. Yeah.
One of the things I've got to say I loved about the shindig was how many people ended up dancing at the end.
Yeah.
It was just like really great. It wasn't one of those events where like there's 5 people sort of kicking around a can on this massive dance floor. There was like
That's depressing.
basically no space left on the dance floor.
Yeah.
People just busting shapes.
So Terry from Conference Innovators said she has never had an event where they've had to kick people out. Like the
wow.
final event. She's like, we had to go round and get people to actually want to leave. It was like, and then we put everyone on the bus.